This week on Dance of Joy, we talk about bumpy Shriners, baking to bouncy beats, and biting off more than you can chew. All that and more as we watch Season 3, Episode 16 of our favorite 80s hit sitcom, Perfect Strangers. Hello, and welcome to Dance of Joy, a Perfect Strangers rewatch podcast. I'm Sophia. I'm one of your hosts, and joining me is my co-host and my brother. What's up, Imran?
Hello, Sophia. I have been bouncing up and down all day because I was so excited about this episode that I ended up baking bumpy bagels begrudgingly. I didn't even want to bake them, but I did.
Beautiful. I thought you've been bouncing up and down because you've been on a sugar high all day from eating cream-filled pastries.
I've had a dozen cream puffs and I'm ready to go. I'm super sugar caffeinated.
Perfect. You sound perfectly prepared for this preview of our favorite Perfect Strangers performance, which is Season 3, Episode 16, called Just Desserts.
And that's already a lot of alliteration. There's gonna be a lot more. This title, you know this phrase, like
just desserts is like you get what's coming to you.
You're gonna get what you deserve. You're all gonna get your just desserts. See? Yeah, it's
very
like an old-timey
apt
gangster thing.
Double entendre.
I love it. In the TV guide for this episode, the description reads, Larry has no trouble finding a market for Balky's delicious Myposian dessert, but mass producing it is a different story.
Uh-oh. This episode stars all of our favorites. We have Larry and Balky, played by Marklyn Baker and Bronson Pinchot, and we also have Marianne and Jennifer, played by Rebecca Arthur and Melanie Wilson. And this episode aired on February 3rd, 1988. Act 1. Let's get into it. We start Act 1 in the apartment, Balky and Larry's apartment, and we see the two couples, Balky, Larry, Jennifer, and Marianne, all dressed up. Balky's in his, that black and gold embroidered top.
It's very fancy, and I'm going to tease this now, listener. Stay tuned for the return of Balky Duds.
The return of Balky Duds.
Rainey will be telling us about this lovely outfit that he's wearing.
Okay, great. So I'll shut up about it now. But in any case, they're all dressed up, and they're sitting around the dinner table that's just in front of the kitchen area. The two couples, and they've just finished eating what we learn is it was a complete Myposian meal that Balky had cooked for them.
Wow.
And Jennifer tells the guys that she was worried about eating a full Myposian dinner, but actually it was delicious. And Balky says, "Oh, thank you, thank you. It is quite a challenge to use every part of the animal."
Whoa, how many courses were they eating? That is challenging. How do you do that?
This is funny to me, and this will also come up later in the show in PS Today, but I feel like in 1988, this line was meant to make you cringe, like, ew, he used every part of the animal.
Right.
But now eating nose to tail is like a trendy hipster thing.
I mean, you can get gourmet cheeks and organ meats are very healthy for you.
Yeah, using the whole animal, nothing goes to waste.
But what was the animal? We don't find out. So I don't know how big this meal was, right? Then Balky tells them that he has prepared the Myposian dessert of kings, Bibi Babkas. Here we go. The first mention of Bibi Babkas. It's the Myposian national dessert treat. He says, legend has it that the first Bibi Babkas were made by Ferdinand Mypos to celebrate his ability to grow a mustache.
And Larry, kind of in a sarcastic, scoffing way, goes, festive occasion indeed.
Yes, it was. And then while he's talking, this little funny physical bit happens as Balky is handing out little dessert plates to everyone to his left, and the plates go all the way around, and Marianne ends up handing it back to Balky, and Balky goes, "Oh, thank you," and takes the plate back when he could have just kept the plate.
Passes full circle.
He passes all the way around.
Now, we should pause here because fans of Perfect Strangers who pay a lot of attention will have noticed a bit of inconsistency in the editing here.
This episode needed what you call in the film industry a continuity editor, someone who takes photos and keeps track of things.
There are a couple instances.
Just a couple.
This is the first one. So in the beginning of this scene where they show the four finishing their meal, the camera is panned out and we see in front of Jennifer 4 large plates stacked up, like dirty plates stacked up in front of Jennifer. Then we get a close-up on Balky while he's delivering his lines. Then when it pans out again, those plates are gone. And suddenly, in front of Balky, there are 4 little dessert plates, which we see him pass around. Also, going back to that close-up of Balky, when he finishes that line, you can see at the end that he like starts to get up as if he was going to go get the dessert plates, which is probably what happened.
Out of order.
Right.
Or...
It was 2 different takes.
Or Balky is the best magician on Mypos, and we don't know about it yet. And he's just
the best everything on Mypos.
He is. He's got the best legs. He's everything, yeah.
My best guess is there was more to this scene that was cut out. And,
and they might have reshuffled some of the takes.
Right.
Hey, you do what you got to do. It's 1988. What do you got to do?
Okay, 1988. Back in the scene. Okay, so they've passed the plates. They're about to Balky has introduced Bibi Babkas, and at the center of the table is a plate of what look like cream puffs, right?
Yeah,
like
cream puff
filled pastries.
Flaky pastry with a luscious cream filling inside that you can
Which
see.
are the Bibi Babkas.
Yeah.
And so he tells everyone, go ahead, take a try. And they each grab one. Jennifer, Marianne, and Larry each grab one, and they take... this is a very funny scene. And they each take a bite. They're quiet. They take like a tentative bite.
Well, Balky's
they're all
waiting
kind of
nervously.
nervous. And Balky's just looking at them. And they start chewing. And Marianne goes, And then Jennifer's chewing and she goes, And then Larry's chewing and he goes, And then Jennifer again goes, And Larry's like, And then all 3 of them in unison, quite surprised, go,
It's a surprised because they clearly didn't think this was going to taste that. But they just ate a Myposian meal. Was that bad?
Yeah, but they definitely had low standards for what this dessert was going to be. But they're very delighted. They all find it very delicious. And so they do this in unison. And then Balky's like, does this mean you like them or do we have gas?
I love that line. Or do we have gas? And Larry goes, Balky, this cream filling is incredible. He goes, these not only taste good, they make me feel good. Like listening to music, like looking at great art. And then he goes, I feel taller. Balky, your Bibi Babkas are so good. I think you could sell them. And Balky goes, get out of the city.
Get out of the city.
I wouldn't feel right taking your money. Get out of here. And he's like, no, not to me. You can sell them to other people.
And he's like, you could have a business. He's like, you can make some money and you can get a lesson in free enterprise. To which Balky gets excited and says, enterprise? You mean I could meet Captain Kirk and Scotty?
Scotty?
And then he does his impersonation of Scotty from the original Star Trek, played by James Doohan. And he does this whole Scottish accent. And he says, I'll have the full power for you in an hour, Captain, but I need more dilithium crystals. I can't do it.
It's pretty good. I love this on multiple reasons. Scotty always was running out of dilithium crystals. It's very annoying. And, oh my God, geek points for a Star Trek reference. Absolutely. Right. I love it.
Well, I mean, it was a good wordplay from Free Enterprise to...
Well, and then I also love this next bit. Yeah, Free Enterprise is Starship Enterprise.
Starship Enterprise.
But I love this next bit because Larry explains the reference. He goes, no, Balky, not the Starship Enterprise.
Right. That's just for any non-Trekkies who might have
missed it. If you didn't get it. Yeah, he goes, Free Enterprise. And then Larry explains this is the American way of doing business.
And right at that moment, I was like,
boy.
Something's going to go wrong.
Bad now. Yeah, things are going to go bad.
Once Larry starts explaining the American way of anything, you know that's where the problem's going to come up.
So Larry suggests, he goes, look, Balky, make up a batch of Bibi Babkas and I will shop them around to restaurants. And Balky's like, Bibi Babkas just can't be whipped up. And now this episode features amazing alliteration of different letters that will be featured, like it's a Sesame Street episode.
Yes.
And here's the first one. He goes, these took me all morning, and I'm the best Bibi Babka baker on Mypos. Believe me, baking Bibi Babkas is a back-breaking business. And Larry goes, I understand baking Bibi Babkas is a back-breaking business, but You're doing it alone. Larry says we can all help and have a Bibi Babka making party. The girls love this idea. And then Balky goes, well, I guess we go bake up a batch of Bibi Babkas and see if anybody bites. And Larry goes, beautiful. It's so good.
Yeah, it was very quick paced and the bees were popping. And that's going to come a few times in this episode. This was just the first run of alliterative language. So then we cut to the next scene. We're in the apartment still, and it's the next day. Balky, Marianne, and Jennifer are at the dining table, and the dining table is covered in flour and baking supplies. And they've been making Bibi Babkas. There's like a little bit of a mini assembly line situation set up at the dining table. And they're about to start the next batch, and Marianne gets very excited, and she asks if they can sing the Bibi Babka song again. And Balky says, well, of course we can. Don't be ridiculous. You can't bake a batch of Bibi Babkas without belting the Bibi Babka ditty. Then, for the first time, we hear the Bibi Babka ditty, which has been ingrained in our memories for the past 30 years.
The minute you hear this, it's going to come back to you. It is set to the tune of Limbo Rock, which is also, I believe remember a long time ago that he was humming it, or there was, it was in a different tune, and I was like, remember Limbo Rock.
And if you don't know the Limbo Rock, it was a popular song in 1962. It was first recorded as an instrumental by the Champs, and then Chubby Checker recorded it with lyrics, and it's that song you sing when you're doing the limbo.
Well, here's what we're going to do, Sophia. We have to hear them sing it. So I'm going to play it line by line and pause, and you're going to describe what is happening.
What Balky's doing? Okay.
After each line, all right?
Like this game.
Ready? We have to hear them. Okay, here we go.
When you're rolling out the door, just make sure to roll it slow.
Okay, so this line he sings as Jennifer on one end, on the far right end of the assembly line, runs a rolling pin over the dough.
Two round pieces of dough next to each other.
And Balky sort of does this body wave.
An amazing wiggle.
This body roll wave motion while he's singing. And then Jennifer rolls out the dough for this line and passes the board, the little cutting board with the dough on it, over to Marianne for the next step.
If you make the dough too quick, Bibi Babka make you sick.
Okay, and this line, Balky is sort of doing a wiggle with his shoulders.
Well, all three of them are doing the same wiggle.
Oh, yeah, and they're in unison, right? Going side to side doing a wiggle.
As Marianne stamps two indentations into each of the circles, right? Yeah. Little spot.
When you pour the filling in, just make sure you wear a grin.
Okay, so after Marianne stamped the indentations, she pushes the board to Balky for the third step, and he pipes cream filling in like a swirl into one side, and Marianne and Jennifer sing that line together as we heard, and they're like
they have some choreography.
Doing a little choreography, pointing to the grin in their dimples or whatever. Okay, and then there's one last line.
When you smile on what you bake, Bibi Babka turn out swell.
Okay, so on the first half of this line,
yes, there's so many great things about
he
this.
does this lean back when you smile on what you bake, like as if he's about to limbo under a stick.
Open your heart to the sky, yes.
Yeah, as if he's about to limbo under a stick. Of course, he doesn't finish. He turns back up and he says, Bibi Babka turn out swell. My favorite, and then, okay, we'll come back to that line in a minute. Then Marianne places a piece of dough on top of the cream.
Making a sandwich, kind of.
Yeah, and then...
and it's complete. And then Balky puts it on the tray. That is a complete Bibi Babka. But the funniest thing...
Bibi Babka turn out swell. To me, my first thought was that it was a classic comedy misdirect because everything else is rhymed. And the previous line ends in, when you smile on what you bake.
You think he's going to say great.
Bibi Babka turn out great.
Yeah.
And then he changes it, which is immediately funny because it breaks our expectation.
Funny, and you never forget it. I remember the first time I was like, swell. He just messed up the rhyme.
But there's another explanation here, which one of our super fans in the Facebook group has pointed out that Bronson Pinchot had talked about in an interview somewhere. And It's kind of like both. The writing-wise, it is that misdirect, and the writers are brilliant to do it. But then Bronson Pinchot, in an interview, had said that, well, it rhymes in the original Meposian, and when it was translated, it no longer rhymes, which is kind of like
out of the city.
That's so
a
clever
really
to say
cute
that.
and clever way to discuss
the original
that.
Meposian, it does right. Baby
Right.
Bob Guitar, that's well. Also, if you notice, this must be one incredible cream filling because you don't bake the thing with the cream filling in it. That always goes in after. It's going to get all melty.
This is also a big topic of discussion
But
among
this
our
must be
listeners
some
in the
crazy
group.
chemical chain reaction that he makes
Yes,
that
it's
nobody else can
special.
make, that even scientists haven't figured out. A cream filling that survives baking in the oven.
Yes,
Unbelievable.
yes.
What is going on? Okay, that was great. The great song. We're going to hear it a couple more times. Actually, a lot of more times.
Okay, so they're all having fun. They're doing this song and dance with every single Bibi Babka. And at that point,
Well, okay,
Larry-
so this is the process. It's very important.
Yes.
Let's remember that. Every step, every movement, every lyric. Important.
yes, you're right. We do need to understand. Let's just go over the Bibi Babka assembly line process
No, we
real
just,
quick.
We
So
just
the
did.
first step is to roll it out. The second step is to stamp the indentations. Then you pipe in the filling. Then you cover the filling with another piece of dough, and then you put it off onto the baking sheet.
There you go. Bing, bam, boom. 1, 2, 3. All with the song, all with the movements.
So they're all having a lovely time doing this process with the song every time. And at that point, Larry runs into the apartment. He's very excited, and he tells them that he has spoken with the chef at the Hyatt Regency, and the chef loves the Bibi Babkas, and the chef has made an order for Monday. And then we find out that this chef wants 2,000 Bibi Babkas by
What are we
Monday.
talking about?
Oh, Larry Appleton.
So
You-
Balky,
what are you
Jennifer,
doing?
and Marianne just kind of look incredulous and a little bit dismayed. And we find out that it is currently Saturday, and there's no way they can make 2,000 by Monday. Why? Because Jennifer tells Larry that it took them all morning to make 3 dozen. And she says, do you know how many dozen 2,000 are? And they all just kind of stand around looking. And from the back, Marianne goes 166 and 2/3 dozen.
What?
And they all
They'll
look
turn
at
and look at
her
her.
in shock. And she goes, my father was a carpenter.
I love it. I love it so much.
And then they still look at her in shock. They're like, what? So here we have what we call a Marianne moment of
Oh,
clarity.
a fantastic Marianne moment
really
of
good
clarity that I may have to add to the T-shirt when I eventually make it. That's good. My father was a carpenter. She just looks all says all confidently. Like it explains everything. So good.
And here we have the next in our series of editing
Oh,
inconsistencies.
continuity error alert.
Error alert. When they finish singing the song and Balky takes the Bibi Babka they finished and sets it on a tray that's sitting on a stool. And then after Larry
Oh, the
runs
tray is
in
gone.
and over to them, that tray on the stool is gone.
The stool
So
is right there,
that's
and
a
the
little
tray
one,
is
yeah.
clearly gone. I just
Yeah.
saw that. Yes, good one. Man, they must have shot a lot of takes of this. But
Maybe.
I know that there's one scene coming up that they
Right.
had to do in one take for the gag.
So anyway, so we find out this chef needs 2,000 Bibi Babkas. Balky's like, no. And Balky says, cousin, you're just going to have to call this chef.
Jeff.
He calls him a chef.
Chef.
And tell him to make a new plan, Stan. And this is so funny. Larry's like, I can't believe my ears. And then Balky says, oh, they're okay. They just stick out a little bit.
I love that literal. He goes around his back and looks at him and
Yeah,
looks at
and
his
like
ears.
starts covering his ears with his hair.
What if the chef's name was Jeff? Bal could be like, Chef Jeff.
Chef Jeff.
Chef
But
Jeff, how are
here we have a reference to make a new plan, Stan.
Yes, we do. It's a great line from a great Paul Simon song called 50 Ways to Leave Your Lover.
Yes.
Make a new plan, Stan, and then you got to hop on the bus, Gus, and set yourself
Yes.
free. I love that song. It's such a good song. So Larry now gives him a little speech about how they have this golden opportunity, a chance to live the American dream, control their own destinies. He wants to start the first Bibi Babka company in America because he goes, I like to take chances. I like to gamble on the future. And Bucky has a great line. He goes, who are we talking about here? He goes, you You like to take chances? He goes, you take 10 minutes to change lanes. And Larry's like, this is different. This is the chance for the four of us to own our own company, be our own bosses. And it's Balky's chance to make Mypos famous, to put Mypos on the culinary map. He's really being aggressive towards Balky to convince him to do what he wants.
And the girls are immediately sold. They're like, we're in.
Yeah.
But Balky is still hesitant, and because he knows something that they don't know. But what he says is baking 2,000 by Monday is impossible. And Larry says, Balky, God made the world in 6 days. And Balky says, yeah, but he didn't have to make a special cream filling for it.
I mean, the cream filling doesn't melt in the oven. Can God make
no,
this?
It's very special. But I like that Balky called him out this time. And he's like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, because that's a ridiculous...
You don't like to take chances and gamble on the future. So Balky is still hesitant. Larry, however, insists that they can do it. And Balky is still pushing back, and he says, cousin, before you run off half crocked, I got to tell you that you can't bake bibi babkas unless you bake them the traditional Myposian way.
Uh-huh.
And he starts to explain, otherwise you run into terrible... But of course, he doesn't get his explanation out because Larry cuts him off.
No, otherwise what? What happens?
No, this is the first time he tried. There will be a few times that in this episode that he tries to explain this, but Larry cuts him off. So this is the first time. And Larry says, well, of course we'll bake them the traditional Myposian way. And he interrupts, doesn't let him finish. He says, after all, that's the fun part. Now, what do you say? And Balky is still hesitant. And then Larry does a bit of manipulating as he does, and he starts going, and then the girls join in, and they're all singing in unison, and Balky's body starts moving uncontrollably on his own. And so finally, Balky says, okay, babies, let's bake some bibi babkas. And then they all start singing the ditty together, and they start dancing in a conga line in unison back toward the kitchen as the scene fades and we end Act 1.
There's a lot of different rhythms in this episode. We have the limbo rock rhythm. We got a conga. There's going to be another rhythm coming up. Oh my God. Listener, let me tell you, there's one place you can go to geek out about Perfect Strangers. And if you're obsessed like we are, you will find like-minded friendly souls. And it is our Facebook group, Dance of Joy Podcast Facebook group. Link in the show notes. I post a thread there every week on the episode we are going to be recording that week, so you can leave your comments, and we will throw them in the show at the end in our shout-out segment. But more importantly, you will find other crazy people like us that will dig into and have theories and find out what's in the background of every episode. Because
let's not say crazy. Let's say other devoted fans of Perfect Strangers.
Devoted. Crazy is a little harsh. I meant it in the funnest way. It's so good. It's a fun crazy. But it's nothing but Perfect Strangers fun right now in our Facebook group. And we got a new member, Sophia. I'm going to let you handle the pronunciation of this one.
Oh, boy. We have a new member we'd love to welcome to our group, Helena Bokobza Carmel, or Helena Bokobza Carmel. Helena or Helena, I'm not quite sure. Let us know in the group what the correct pronunciation is. But welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Everyone say hi.
And we're going to get back to
Helena.
some contributions Helena has made later on in the shout-out section. Okay, Act 2. Act 2 starts. We are 24 hours later, and we'll find out how we know that in just a minute. And we're in the living room, and suddenly the living room has transformed into a bit of a bakery.
A commercial kitchen almost.
Yes. There is now this huge, big table in the living room
where did that come
is
from?
a much larger space for an assembly line. And there are all these industrial baking racks.
Where did he get all these pastry racks
scattered.
from?
First of all, how big is this living room? But
and there's a giant pot of flour there, a giant pot of flour,
and lots of pink bakery boxes. It's just all over the place, and there's flour and baking supplies all on this table.
And everyone is
pastry
covered
racks.
in flour.
They're racks,
yeah,
right. And everyone is covered in flour. Correct.
Balky and Marianne have chef hats on. We got to make sure to mention the chef's hats.
And Balky, Marianne, and Jennifer are all wearing aprons, and they're working hard, and they're covered in flour, and they're looking a little bit tired.
And there's Bibi babkas on all these trays behind them. They've been very productive.
And then we pan out a little bit and we see Larry off to the side. His tie is neatly tucked into his shirt between the buttons. He's got a clipboard and he has not a single bit of flour on him at all.
Clean.
He is clean.
He is clean as a whistle.
He's with the clipboard and a pen managing the whole situation. And then we hear him announce to the group that they've been working for 24 hours straight, and they've already reached the halfway mark, 1,000 Bibby Bop.
Wow. That's impressive.
He makes this announcement in like a very cheerful way, but Marianne and Jennifer respond with a yay. And Larry's like, that's the spirit. And he encourages them to keep going.
So the girls are a little bit tired and irritable, and Jennifer and Marianne get into an argument because Marianne keeps bumping into Jennifer, trying to get the flour that's past her. And Jennifer's like, you've been bumping me for 16 hours. It's like flying with Shriners, which that's a joke.
Right. And then Marianne comes back with the second joke. She says, oh, so now you're making fun of my hat.
Yeah, so there's 2 jokes about the Shriners right here.
So these are 2 jokes, one of which I understood. And the Marianne line is a funny joke because it implies that she completely didn't get the first joke.
Right.
And she's responding with a different line, which is meant to be a joke. And I get the hat part because I know. Let's talk about the Shriners. The Shriners are like
fez hats.
They're like a Mason type.
Yeah, I'm
group,
not exactly sure what kind of organization this is.
Fraternity, something like the Masons, I think. Right?
It's very like Illuminati. I don't know what's going on there.
And they had these red felt hats, right? These like fez type hats.
Yeah.
And so that's the connection to, so now you're making fun of my hat. She's like, because Shriners wore funny hats. And but what is the first joke? Like flying with Shriners? Were Shriners known to be bumpy flyers or what?
They may have been known to be.
You've been bumping me for 16 hours. It's like flying with Shriners. Did their flights crash? I know they like had flights to like humanitarian missions and stuff like that.
I know. I read it as they're just really bad on planes and they don't sit down and they bump into the waitresses or the flight attendants. Okay. I don't know.
Is that something that was known about Shriners?
I'm not
sure. I tried to do research, but I couldn't find anything.
It's a vague joke there, writers. Yeah. But
definitely by the cadence of it and the writing, like we know this show well enough to recognize that these were 2 jokes in one. And the second joke was that Marianne misses the first joke and thinks she's talking about that.
It may be that like the Shriners take over a plane and there's so many of them you can't get through them without bumping into them because whenever they fly, it's like a bunch of them. There was a Shriners temple or something in downtown Chicago for a long time that had events. I remember I went there as a kid.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay, so a little bit about Shriners. If anyone wants to do a deep dive into the Shriners and explain this first joke to me, feel free to let us know in the Facebook group.
So Marianne and Jennifer are arguing about Shriners. Neither of them like the Shriners. When Balky runs over, very alarmed, and breaks them up, he goes, "Ladies, please, what are you doing?" And he picks up the Bibby Bopkas gently. He goes, arguing in front of the Bibby Bopkas. They can't hear ugly sounds like arguing and fighting. They've got to hear beautiful sounds of love and gentleness and kindness.
He's like
as he's caressing. He's slowly petting the dough. Yeah. Which is hilarious. I mean, it's like a souffle. You got to be quiet or the souffle is going to fall.
You have to put love into it. And then Larry goes into supervisor mode and he like completely ignores everything that's happening. And he's like, we're falling behind. We have to work harder. And Jennifer finally just comes out. She's like, I'm irritable. I'm tired. Balky suggests that the girls take a break, but Larry's like, what? They just broke for dinner 8 hours ago.
Oh my God.
And Jennifer and Marianne get pretty fed up and they quit. And they start heading toward the door and Larry goes after them toward the door. He says, you can't quit. We only have 1,000 more to go. We need you. And they leave and the door slams and he goes, who needs them?
I love the flip.
We need you. Slam door.
Who needs them? Oh my God. Fantastic flip by neurotic Larry. Like it's
really good.
Just shows you how crazy his brain is all over the place. And Bucky goes, well, he tells them without the girls, they're never going to finish in time. He says, we're up to our buttocks in unbaked bibibobkas. There's no way I can bake 1,000 bibibobkas by myself. It's as simple as that. You can't squeeze water out of a sponge. That's not what he meant to say.
The saying is you can't squeeze water out of a stone or a rock. But of course, you can squeeze water out of a sponge.
I guess you can. So kind of, yes. And then Larry finally offers to help. As Jennifer called him up before. She's like, why don't you put down the clipboard and get your hands white? But now Larry's like, Balky, I'll help you. He goes, there are times when management has to loosen its tie and join hands with the workers. To which Balky looks around. And he's like, I don't know who you're talking about. So then Larry takes the board with the unassembled Bibibobkas over to the first station in the Bibibobka making station as they start. And then Balky starts with the song, right? He goes, first
and
you
he's doing
roll
the body roll.
the dough. But Larry has rolled the pin over the Bobkas one time real quick, and he's done.
And he's waiting for Balky to move to the next lyric.
The first line so that he can move to the next stage in the process.
And Balky's like singing. He's taking his time. He's doing all the movements. So he's doing that body roll, and then he does the second line, and he does the wiggle shimmy side to side with his shoulders.
Then Balky, and Larry real quickly goes bam, bam, and stamps the thing and slides it over. Let's go.
And then when it's Balky's turn to do the piping, Larry starts singing the third line, but he sings it
when you pour
quickly.
Filling in, make sure you wear a grin.
And then he finishes the line, and Balky is still slowly piping the filling in. And then Balky sings the last line again slowly.
Because he's got to do the lean back. When you smile and watch you bake, baby Bobka turn out swell. And then he covers it. Yeah, he puts it in the pan. He covers it. He goes, cousin C, one down and only 999 to go, Balky says. And Larry goes, whoa. Hold on a second.
And he suggests that they lose the song because the song is slowing them down. And next we have our next round of alliterative comedic dialogue, which is so well written that I thought it best to do this next bit as an act out.
Yes, Perfect Strangers reenactment. Who do you want to play, sister?
I would love to play Balky.
You got it.
Okay, ready?
Yeah.
Here's what comes after Larry suggests they lose the song because it's slowing them down. We can't bump the Bibibobka ditty. It's part and parcel of the point-by-point process of baking Bibibobkas.
I understand that it's part and parcel of the point-by-point process of baking Bibibobkas, Balky buddy, but we gotta cut some corners. We're talking mass production here.
Don't bring religion into this.
I love that line.
You can't bake Bibibobkas without belting the Bibibobka ditty. If you drop the damn ditty, you're doomed.
Okay, fine. We'll keep the Bibibobka ditty, but we gotta pick up the pace, Balky, and really bop with the Bibibobka ditty, buddy.
All right. I can bop with the beat a bit more briskly, booby.
Booby! Okay, wait, we have to end scene, but we have to talk about this last line and the reaction that happens, because this is clearly an ad-lib. There are times in this episode when both guys are trying to crack each other up.
Legend has it.
Yes, explain this. It's so funny.
Bronson Pinchot told Marklin Baker that he had a surprise for him and he was going to add something, but he didn't know what was coming. And that Marklin Baker actually had another line after this.
Oh, he did he?
But, right. But, and he was supposed to have the last word. But then when Bronson Pinchot said this line, and it comes out as booby, and some people think it might have been meant to be like bubby, like the Yiddish grandma word.
Yeah, that makes sense. Bubby.
So, but in his Maposian accent, he pronounced it booby, which is also funny.
Yeah.
And given that what follows in this scene is the reason they needed to do this all in one take.
Yeah.
They couldn't break or do anything. So you can see after he says, all right, I can bop with the beat a bit more briskly, booby.
He is looking directly into Marklin Baker's eyes.
Marklin Baker looks at him and just smiles.
And you see a little crack of a smile like he's about to break.
He smiles big, actually. Yeah. And then he turns away.
Yeah.
And as the story goes, he just like skips whatever else he was supposed to say after that.
He's like, I can't, because if he was going to open his mouth, he was about to lose it. And then, if you would notice, explain what Balky's doing. It's the
Balky
funniest
does
thing.
a really silly, like, I got you.
Yes.
Dance, or he does like a little dance and his facial expression, and he like he opens his mouth wide and like jiggles
his tongue
side
out,
to side,
and then he rocks back and forth with straight legs, and it's very.
It is so cute.
What it reminded me of? It's very like Charlie Chaplin, Buster Keaton, classic comedy. He's like, I got you, because you could tell they're kind of
it was a very Charlie Chaplin.
They're trying to one up each other with the B alliteration, and he gets him and booby, and it's fantastic, and it's so funny, and they leave it in.
So funny. So yes, brilliant moment in the show. It was either that Mark Linn-Baker had another line or had another action that he was going to do, but whatever it was, he doesn't do it. And so he just smiles, and then he looks away, and he walks in the other direction toward the kitchen while Bronson Pinchot does this. So great. I got you, Dan.
So Balky's agreed to bop the ditty. Go with the Bippy Bop the ditty. We're going to bop up the pace a little, and they begin again. This time faster, as every round Larry goes 5, 6, 7, 8. And then Balky
rolling out the dough.
Yeah, and he does the wiggle real fast.
And Balky's still doing all the dance, but all the movements, but it's getting faster and faster. He's gonna get tired.
And they start making them. They start cranking them out, but this pace is too fast. As Balky is just kind of losing his place.
He's like
he's trying
gyrating
to keep up.
all over the place.
He's gotta be. His head's gotta hurt by now. Meantime, Larry starts going da, 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 and then Larry gets so into it that he just grabs Balky and starts dancing with him in the living room, back and forth, as Balky's trying to object. I go, cousin, and he goes, stops him. He goes, cousin, you are a man repossessed, which is a mangle. He means possessed. And then Larry goes, and loving it, and they start dancing again. And he goes, Balky, rumba tempo. We've got to get these Bippy Bopkas baked. And Balky's like, cousin, it's too fast. And then he goes, and besides, shouldn't I be leading? And he tries to make him dance when he throws him away. I love this. He just, oh my God, Larry got so caught up, and he's such in a manic state.
Oh my gosh.
It's even too much for Balky. It's amazing.
Too much for Balky. And one of our group members, Lauren Miller, pointed out that "and loving it" was a nice nod to Maxwell Smart from Get Smart.
And loving it.
I mean, he doesn't say it in that voice.
But it was one of Maxwell Smart's catchphrases. Yeah. Yes.
Right. Okay. So back in the scene. Balky's like, it's too fast. And Larry says, do you want to make Meepos famous or not? To which Balky says, oh, give me a line of credit.
I laugh at that line every time. I don't know why.
Line of credit. He means give me some credit, but he makes it a line of credit. And he calls him out. He calls him out. He says, he calls Cousin Larry out. You don't care about making Meepos famous. And Larry doesn't even fight this. He's like, you're right, I don't. Now, are you going to help me or not? And then we have a very funny exchange of the famous.
Oh, we should do this as a reenactment.
Okay, ready? Here we go.
Yeah.
Who do you want to be?
This time I'll be Balky.
Okay. So Larry says, but you're right, I don't. Now, are you going to help me or not?
I'm not. I quit.
Okay, fine, quit. I'll make all the Bippy Bopkas myself. I beg your pardon? I beg your pardon?
What did I just say? You got that right. I'm the only one that knows how to make Bippy Bopkas with the special cream filling.
Oh, what's the big deal? Pinch of this, bit of that, dollop of whatever.
Oh, is that so? Well, let me tell you this. If you don't make it
I tell you what, Balky, if you can't take the heat, get out of my kitchen.
Oh my God, I can't believe Larry said that. And he sticks his arm
he said
out.
It so mean.
And Balky, again, second time, he's trying to explain what's going to happen. Yeah. But then Balky just stops. He composes himself. He goes, all right. Fine. And then this line, I also love how he says this. You've made your cake. Now lie in it. I don't know why I love how he says
because it's a mixture of you've made your bed, now lie in it.
Yeah.
And
You made
making your cake and eating it too.
And then there's just the picture of someone lying in their cake. But then also how he says, now lie in it. So funny.
And Balky storms off to his bedroom. And Larry continues the assembly line, but he's not singing the Bibi Babka ditty. He's singing the Roomba rhythm that we heard him say before. And he's going through making these.
Oh my God, third rhythm.
And he's going through speedily making these Bibi Babkas. So now we have 2 times that Balky has tried to explain what's going to happen, and Larry cuts him off.
I wonder what he was trying to tell him. Listener, we will find out in the third act, but before we do, if you are enjoying the show, if this is one of your favorite episodes, if this is one of your favorite shows from the 80s, make sure to support this podcast. We are an independent podcast, and your help and donations help us. Visit danceandjoypod.com/support. There's a little buy me a coffee button. It's a little virtual tip jar. And we welcome
need coffee to drink when you're eating Bibi Babkas.
Yes, we do. We got to dip the Bibi Babkas in a nice Miposian coffee. I bet Mipos coffee is really good. Like Turkish coffee. Imagine Turkish coffee. Dip the Bibi Babkas in the coffee. So buy us a coffee so we can dip our Bibi Babkas in them.
And onward to Act 3. Now, this was an interesting beginning to Act 3. We often start with an external shot of the apartment building, but there's another shot before that. There's an external shot of what seems to be the Chicago River downtown.
Yeah, with the bridges going across it.
Yes, and it was just an establishing shot to show that it's very early in the morning. It's
your standard morning wake up shot. Yes.
But I thought it was interesting that, I don't know, we just haven't seen that much.
Yeah, because the shot of their apartment is in Los Angeles. So
right. So this is Chicago early in the morning, sometimes. The river downtown. They don't really live downtown, so I didn't. Anyway. It's just established that it's early morning, and then we see the external shot of the apartment, and then we go inside the apartment. And Balky comes out of his bedroom, and then the camera pans out to show the living room. And it is now full of those baking racks and the pink and many, many, many pink bakery boxes stacked piled high. And the baking racks are full of finished
There are Bibi Babkas everywhere.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Larry enters the scene from the kitchen side, and now he's covered in flour. His shirt, his hands, his face, there's like flour everywhere. And he tells Balky quite proudly, 2,000 Bibi Babkas, buddy. And throughout this following dialogue, he keeps stepping toward Balky and gesturing with his hand. And Balky's in this clean black shirt
and black pants. This is not a good costume choice for this situation.
Every time Larry steps toward him, he steps back to avoid getting flour on his. But there's flour everywhere.
It's not a good idea wearing black, Balky. What do you think?
And so this happens like throughout this dialogue. He advances on him, and Balky steps back to avoid getting flour on him, and Larry says there's a lesson to be learned here.
Lesson time.
It's not
this
isn't
time.
our lesson time.
Boy.
This is just Larry's lesson. What Larry thinks is a lesson.
Yeah.
And then, of course, Larry explains the lesson, and he says, "Balky, Balky, Balky," and again he steps closer, and Balky backs away. He says, we all want to maintain the quality of our product, but you see, to make it in business today, you've got to be willing to sacrifice, persevere, and yes, compromise a little. And then finally, with the last line, Larry puts his hand on Balky's shoulder, and Balky looks a little annoyed.
He did get
there's
him.
now flour. And so then they're standing there, and he finishes this line, and then there's a loud popping noise, and there's a bakery box on the table in front of them, and the lid to it kind of pops up a little, and there's loud popping noise.
What is going on?
And they both hear it, and Larry's looking at Balky without looking toward the box. He says, "What was that?" And Balky just calmly says, "I think that was one of your compromises."
This is amazing.
Then the camera pans out, and we see another loud pop, and another box lid bounces up. And then they realize that the noises are coming from the boxes. And Larry goes to open one of them to investigate. And Balky puts his hand on top of the box and stops him from opening. And he says, don't open the box. And this line totally reminded me of when they were out on the ledge and he said, the guard locked the window. He says it the exact same way. Don't open this box.
And then he has a line where he's like, what are you talking about? He's like, I'm talking about this box and you not opening it.
Not opening it. So Larry insists, of course, because he's being Larry. And so Balky's like,
Okay.
And he leans away from the box because, of course, Balky knows what's going to happen. He leans his body away. Yeah. And then Larry, very comically, the box is right under his face, right? So he opens the box and he puts his head down looking into the box right over the box. And then we hear a pop and we see this cream filling shoot up from the box right into Larry's face. Yeah. And I don't know, something about cream pastries in the face, cream pie in the face.
It's always funny.
It's always funny. Always funny.
And then you see there's a delayed plop that lands on Balky's shirt at the end. It comes down straight down from the ceiling, like a bird pooped on him. And then Larry
and the audience goes wild. When this thing explodes up from the box into Larry's face, there's no lines right away. Yeah. It's just in his face. The audience goes wild.
And it's the cream pie in the face. It's always funny.
When in doubt, writers.
Just like man getting hit by
in
ball
face.
In the groin is always going to be funny.
So first the audience goes wild for a long time. Yeah. And the two of them this is the scene that they probably could have only shot once.
Yes.
Because it was very involved with props and the audience response. So they have to hold it in the whole time.
They do it well. And so this is something I noticed this episode and the next episode. There are so many times where they have held focus and not cracked up and they don't move. When something ridiculous is happening, they're just frozen dead face. And it's so funny.
And the audience calms down. The laughter ends. Then Larry slowly turns his face to Balky and he says, the Bibi Babka exploded. And then there's more laughter. And then he goes, in my face.
In my face.
There's more laughter. It is so beautiful.
And then Balky leans forward and looks carefully at his face. He goes, oh, well, yes, it did. And then he goes, and do you know why? Because if you don't make the Bibi Babkas the traditional Meposian way, the Bibi in the Babka goes boom.
And Larry says, the Bibi in the Babka goes boom.
And then my favorite part, Balky just goes, basically. It's so funny. I don't know why I love it. He goes, basically.
And then perhaps the best part of this whole episode and the scene that everybody remembers for the rest of their lives, all the Bibi Babkas all around them start exploding.
Oh,
and there's cream and flour and pastry flying everywhere. And they're just exploding one after another. And the two of them just stand there.
That's the best. They're
perfectly still. Again, this is the scene that they probably had to do
How
in
could
one
you
take.
not be laughing? Yes.
How could you possibly do this in more than one take? Because it's a big mess.
So I think they're using, there's these things they use for gunshots in movies called squibs. And there are these charges. So, because you can see smoke coming off of everything. So these are definitely squibs with gunpowder in it.
In the pastries.
Yes, set to pop. And I love how it stops and there's a pause. And then one big one in the back goes up. You see a tray go flying in the air.
Yeah.
Yes, it's a really big one at the end.
But notice how in this culminating scene where they're all exploding, suddenly it's only the Bibi Babkas that are not in boxes. None of the ones in boxes are exploding.
But my other thought throughout this whole thing is, wait, only 1,000 of them should be exploding. The first 1,000 batch was great. You did it the traditional
That's true.
way.
That's a very good point. The first 1,000 were made.
You could still sell half of them to the
Maybe those
chef.
first 1,000 are the ones in the boxes that are not exploding.
Chef Jeff could still buy the first 1,000. They're still good. That's not that bad.
Those are the ones in those stacks of boxes that never exploded.
Half of them they made
the second 1,000. Yeah, and you could have delivered those first 1,000 to the chef. Anyway. And here we also have another, what did we call it?
Continuity error alert.
Continuity error number 3.
Oh, my God.
So when the first Bibi Babka exploded inside the box that was on the table in front of them, and it made the box lid kind of pop up, the second one to explode is actually the same box, and the lid is down again suddenly. in a closed position, and it just explodes again as if it never exploded the first time. So most likely it was one's a wider shot and one's a close-up shot. So it was probably like the same shot, and they just used it twice. The broad angle and the closer.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
They used both camera.
There is so
angles.
much going on in this scene. I would
forgive
them
that one.
for
Yeah, that was
anything
easy.
because I didn't really notice because you got to worry about these charges going off and that nobody gets hurt, and you have one shot.
My brain just fixated on how come only the ones outside of the boxes are exploding, but
It's not funny.
Your
with the one in the box.
explanation.
Yeah. Well, half
makes
of them are good.
sense. Half of them are good. That first 1,000 were packed away in the box.
And now I think we actually get to the real lesson time.
Yeah,
right?
and we don't have lesson time music. We have scene change music because the scene changes, but I think this is lesson time.
Yeah.
So scene changes, and we are now later that morning, and Balky and Larry are like cleaning up the Bibi Bopka mess in the living room. And Larry has now been to the chef and delivered the bad news, even though we just realized that
You
he could
still
have given them
1,000
half
you could
the
have sold.
order.
Yes.
Yeah,
And I bet the chef would have been fine. But clearly he wasn't fine because Larry goes, the chef at the hotel was pretty upset. And he goes, French is a colorful language. He goes, I don't speak a word of it, and yet I understood everything he said, which is so funny as they're cleaning up. Also, I noticed if you watch this, real small detail. Because I've watched this now 3 times. Balky gets cream on his fingers while he's wiping the table, and then he just wipes it on his pants. And he continues to like wipe it in and off his pants. And I was like, why are you wiping the cream on your black pants?
Because he's already dirty at this point. But he literally has a sponge in his hand.
Yes.
He could just wipe it on
He
the
looks
sponge.
around and you see him and he just wipes it on his pants. I
I
was like,
totally
what are you doing?
missed that.
It's so
I'm going to have
funny.
to go back and watch that. So then Larry goes into one of his like self-pity monologues, and Balky tries to get a word in, but of course Larry talks over him and he doesn't. And he goes into this whole like lamenting speech. Balky, I had it all planned. I had a schedule. I had a customer all lined up. I thought this was how you started a business. Where did I go wrong? And then finally at the end, he's like, oh, I'm sorry. What were you going to say? And he lets Balky speak. And Balky says, there are some things that just can't be rushed, like Antiques, Redwoods, a really good episode of Moonlighting. And then there's laughter from the audience. And then he says, any episode of Moonlighting.
Another moonlighting dig because I believe the show would always fall behind in production and there would be hiatuses and long delays.
Yes.
So
Something
another
like
great moonlighting. It's a moonlighting dig is great.
Who'd have thought in 1988 that in 2021 we would still be watching Perfect Strangers, but not really moonlighting?
Yeah,
People don't
because
really get that
moonlighting was
reference.
like critically acclaimed back then.
Maybe that's
like
our
everybody
next
loved it.
podcast.
Wow, I wonder. I don't even know if
Rewatch.
that show would hold up. I don't even know where you can
Probably
watch it.
not.
I don't know where
Yeah.
you can stream it.
All right, we're back to this scene. So that's the lesson. I think there are some things that just can't be rushed.
Yes, you got to take your time.
And that's it because it wraps up. Larry's like, yes, you're right. And then he's like, yep, that's it. You're right. And then he asks Balky if he thinks Jennifer and Marianne will still like him. And Balky suggests that he could like let them rest for a week and then send them some flowers and they might even speak to him again. And Larry's like, well, we could send them a few complimentary Bibi Bopkas from the one, there are a few that didn't explode. And just then we have this like close up shot on one Bibi Bopka and there's like this dramatic music and it slowly swells to this dramatic music and slowly gets bigger and bigger and then explodes. And then they're like flowers. Yes, flowers. And roll credits.
Wow, that was some.
boy.
Yeah, that exploding bit. It's some like almost like creature effects, like
Pyrotechnics,
high end
special
special effects for the show with squibs and charges.
You have to believe that they only had one shot to do this because imagine doing that take a second time. First of all, the audience would already know the gag.
Oh my God, you have to
Second of all, you'd
reset
have to
all
clean it
those.
all up
Yeah,
and get
reset all the
more
charges.
pastries and do
Yeah.
it all over again. And I don't think they would have done that.
Those
back then.
charges you got to set once and hope you get it.
Which also meant that they probably didn't do it with the actual exploding pastries in rehearsal, so it was probably new to Bronson Pinchot and Marklin Baker as well. The surprise was genuine.
They didn't know what was going to happen.
I mean, they knew things were going to explode, but they didn't know how it was going to be or look or whatever.
You know what's not a surprise is the fact that we have podcasts merch that you can purchase and wear and proudly go out in public and show everyone you are a Dance of Joy podcast fan. Visit our TeePublic shop, danceofjoypod.com/shop, and there are lots of apparel, tank tops, hoodies, but there's accessories, face mask, mugs, tote bags. There's often sales at TeePublic. Usually they're doing them like twice a month. If you buy something, send us a photo. We want to see you with some Dance of Joy merch out in the world. You know what this episode reminded me of? It's so random.
I Love Lucy.
I didn't even think about that.
The assembly line episode with the chocolate
with the wrapping the
factory.
chocolates. Yes,
Maybe, kind of.
No,
I
it
mean,
wasn't
it's not
that. It wasn't that, but that is a good callback. And again, my best part is when the lady comes back in and then she just goes, "Speed it up, Arno." And you're like, "Oh boy!" And then
I mean, it's totally different, but it has like similar.
No, it reminded me of, if let the listener know, our father used to work at the Drake Hotel as he was the room service catering manager. And one summer, I was a busboy at the Drake at one of the restaurants. But I saw the guts of like the kitchen and how everything connected, and their pastry department was well known. So all those pastry racks and boxes reminded me of like working as a busboy and walking by, and I could smell the yummy, delicious things on these racks all the time.
I never worked there, but I remember as a kid going back into that kitchen and seeing the pastry area and the pastry chef, and it would be these like intricate cakes and whatever else.
Oh, they
like
made amazing. Yeah, they were known
chef.
for their chocolates and their cakes.
Yeah.
And the wildest thing is that kitchen in the Drake Hotel, it connects to every part of the building from the inside. It is really crazy. There's like, you can get to there from any floor. It's like wild the way it's got like secret passages. But this episode, easily, this is number one. This is so far my favorite, Your best favorite. Perfect Strangers episode we have watched without a doubt.
I just think, rewatching it now, when I finished, I just thought, like, what a fun and silly premise for an episode, for a storyline, right?
It's very clever.
I would love to have been in that writer's room, like, who came up with the idea of exploding cream-filled pastries and then built a story around that?
What if they explode?
I'm pretty sure that's how that would have happened. You had this vision of exploding pastries and then build a story around that about why they would be exploding. Or I don't know how that happened. That's just how I imagine it. But like, how do you even get there, right? Like such a silly... And, we've talked about previous episodes being kind of like these common sitcom tropes, like buying a used car and like bargaining with the used car salesman. But then you get an episode like this.
Baking disasters have happened in certain other shows, but this one is like so specific,
so specific. This is, maybe it started with a common trope, but it turned into something very unique and different.
I just think this episode is strong in the writing and in the moments. It reminds me of the great seasons of The Simpsons, the episodes that Conan O'Brien wrote. Every line was perfect. Every line was classic.
Every word has
in the
a function
in the Conan O'Brien episodes, and in this one, there's very little filler. Every line,
every word serves a purpose. Yes, and the alliterative stuff is very funny.
The alliteration was amazing. So amazing.
Writing is brilliant. The acting is brilliant. The editing, not so much.
The continuity. A little bit. We did not get Dimitri appearance. He's probably behind all these pastry racks. I don't know where they were going to put him.
Probably.
But this makes me really excited to see what Dimitri Sheep has done this week.
Okay, let's take a look. Let's head on over to our friend Dimitri Sheep on Instagram. If you're not aware, please go to Instagram and follow Dimitri, Dimitri, Sheep, all one word. Dimitri Sheep is a pal of ours who is following this journey with us and posting themed photographs for every episode that we review. And it's absolutely brilliant and so clever and cute. So the post for this episode, the location is marked as Chicago Pastry.
I love it.
And I really enjoyed this one. So we have Dimitri Sheep in the center, and there's some flour on his nose, and in front of him is this bowl of dough
It's
and all
dough.
these baking
It's kneaded
things.
dough. It's ready to go. Yeah.
And like the disassembled Bibi Babka with like a piping bag with cream filling, all this, and there's flour all over the table. There's measuring spoons and stuff. And so here's the best part. Off to the side is the recipe written on an old-fashioned like index card, recipe card, and it says Bibi Babkas, and the amount for the recipe is 166 2/3 dozen.
That's great. It's so great.
Which is 2,000 Bibi Babkas, as we found out.
My father was a carpenter.
Marianne.
Yeah.
And then there's 3 steps of instructions rolled for what to do in the recipe, and it is the lines to the Bibi Babka ditty. The first one says, roll out the dough slow, exclamation mark. Second one says, pour the filling, grin. Pour the filling, period, grin, period. The third one says, smile on what you bake.
Yeah.
And then at the bottom it says, in case of emergency, and then in all caps, get out of the city.
Out of the city.
What is that round thing there? Is that a mixer that's just above it or some kind of timer?
It's a timer.
It's like an egg timer or something.
That's a timer. That's a kitchen timer, I think. Yeah.
It's fantastic. Great job.
It is so great.
I think Dimitri Sheep, hopefully you use these ingredients and you bake something after you took this photo because like you legit made dough right there for the photo. It's fantastic.
There's dough in the photo.
Yeah.
There's like a disassembled Bibi Babka.
You made some Bibi Babkas. I want some. Ship them over.
Dimitri Sheep, we would love to eat your Bibi Babkas.
I want to try it, Bibi Babkas.
So clever. Please go and follow our friend Dimitri Sheep on Instagram.
Well done.
We love everything you're doing there. Thank you, Dimitri Sheep.
Lots of great Balky-isms this episode. We got a cousin before you run off half-crocked.
You can't squeeze water out of a sponge.
You're a man repossessed.
Oh, give me a line of credit.
And my favorite, you've made your cake, now lie in it.
We have one, don't be ridiculous.
Of course I have. Don't be ridiculous.
Oh,
And
yeah.
we have a couple
great
other
catchphrases.
catchphrases.
Great ones. We got to get out of the city. We got to let me get this straight.
A whole exchange of ha.
Sequence, which is hilarious. And then you got that right. And then Larry, of course, going Balky.
And then we have this brilliant repeated use of alliterative sounds, which will continue in future episodes. We've seen a little bit of it in the past, but this episode really
heavily
cranked it
featured.
up.
And it was B's, but it was also
Because of
P's.
Bibi Babkas
It
and
was
P's.
D's.
Yeah.
And I think there was another consonant. I can't remember. I thought there was like a
I think
G
it
or
was
something.
P's and D's.
D's.
We have had a little bit of this in past episodes, but this episode really cranked it up to a new level, partially because the word Bibi Babka itself is so alliterative. And we're going to start seeing a lot more of this in future episodes.
I bet Bronson he had to have made up that word, Bibi Babka, and it's just so funny. And yeah, it lends to alliteration. We have a Marianne moment of clarity.
A really good one, too.
A really good one. Add that one to the list.
And then we have Larry getting carried away with some scheme that he has.
It's like every other episode of this show is Larry in a crazy plan. You know what we haven't seen in a long time? The Dance of Joy.
The Dance of Joy. But we did a lot of other dancing in this episode.
Oh, yeah. There was a lot of dancing and singing and wiggling.
Some limbo, some conga line.
Before we get to Perfect Strangers today, listener, I teased it in the beginning. Guess what? It is the return of Rainey and Balky Duds.
Get out of the city.
I'm so excited.
I know. I told you.
I have not pre-listened to this. I can't wait.
I told you when it comes back, it's going to be great. And she picked like the best episode of Perfect Strangers to come back to. Here is Rainey.
Hey there, Imran and Sophia. It's Rainey from Balky Duds. I have not been around in a while. I'm so sorry for that. I have had a very, very chaotic few weeks here, and it's been hard to catch up on some of the extra fun things. So I wanted to talk a little bit today about Season 3, Episode 16, Just Desserts, also known as the Bibi Babka episode. An absolute classic. I love it. You love it. This episode has a few fun little things going on. One of them is a continuity error, which I thrive on. I am a terrible person to watch movies with because I will notice that weird edit when something shifts back and forth. Ask me about The Departed sometime. And
oh my God, that's one of my favorite things in movies also to like pick out. You can really geek out, but she's going to love this episode then if she loves continuity error.
So in this episode, we start off with Aladdin's Curtains, which is one of my favorite. It's kind of a vest. I guess it's a little more of a general top because I think it does have some sleeve caps on it. It's either a vest over just a black shirt or it's all connected. I'm honestly not quite sure, but it's that black and gold number. And then we have the next most awesome thing in this episode, which is the chef hat. I really enjoy that Balki and Marianne have very, very different styles of chef hat. Like she's got that little French number and he's got the like Pope hat that has to go up to the ceiling. Obviously that's very fun. It makes the dance even funnier because it's wobbling back and forth. But the crux of the ridiculous Balki Duds ness in this episode is the black shirt that he's wearing after the chef hat has gone away. And as the Bibi Babkas are exploding, if you watch his shirt, not only does one button shift, like buttoned and unbuttoned, I guess they couldn't settle on how much they were revealing of his like tank top underneath. And there's a big splotch of filling that disappears and comes back repeatedly. So obviously that implies they did film this scene more than once.
Oh,
which is
man.
Crazy. And they must have just had to go with whatever worked best. I would really love to know more about how that was filmed because it looks like an absolute riot. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I did. And don't forget, when you rolling out the dough, just be sure you roll it slow.
So now I'm questioning whether they
this
did
is
this
interesting
in one
because
take.
Two things. She actually found another. I thought she was going to repeat one that we already mentioned, but she found a fourth continuity error. Yeah. So thank you for that, Rainey. And now I'm rethinking. Maybe they did do this a couple of times, or maybe just post explosions.
They redid some of the parts that didn't have
the dialogue.
That's possible. They maybe reset. Because I don't think you can do the explosion part again. They may have reshot other that may
and like cleaned off the maybe they shot different versions of the post explosion dialogue.
I love it. I love that Rainey mentioned the hats also. That's a fine detail. Again, follow Rainey at Balki Duds, one word, on Instagram. You've heard her in our past episodes, and it's so great to hear you again, Rainey. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, now we're at the segment of our show that we call Perfect Strangers Today, or PS Today, in which we talk about if this story were to happen today, how would this episode be different?
Well, look, I'm going to go out and say, for me, this is a timeless episode. I wouldn't change a thing. Like, it all holds up still.
It all holds up.
It's almost a perfect episode. This is why you can revisit this, and it's still hilarious. It's a perfect, classic, timeless bit of comedy.
Yeah, my only one, I agree 100%. Yes, and this could air today in modern times.
Yep.
As a story about today and still hold up. My only bit of commentary, which I mentioned before, is that like nose to tail cooking and dining is like now this hipster trendy thing. So like in today's world, Miposian cuisine would, and I think I've said this in a different episode.
Wouldn't cringe at it.
Like, they wouldn't cringe at it or be disgusted by it. It would be like this trendy thing. Balki could even open up a nose to tail Miposian like food truck or something, or even a restaurant, and it would be maybe that could be their business venture broader than just Bibi Babkas. But yeah, in 1988, it was like this cringeworthy joke. Like clearly that line was written as a joke because with the expectation that people would cringe at that.
That's that is the one thing that would change. You're right.
But now it's just like a thing.
The rest of the episode, it's perfect. Don't change the thing.
It was perfect, except do some editing, but it's fun to see those editing continuity errors. Anyway.
All right, let's get into the shout out, sister. I know we got a ton.
We have a lot of shout outs. So as we've mentioned, we have a Facebook group of dedicated listeners and lovers of Perfect Strangers, and there was quite a lengthy discussion about a lot of things in this episode. We're not going to cover all of them, but we'll talk about a few things.
We'll go back and forth. You start.
Okay, first up is Cousin Pam Hitchcock. Cousin Pam writes, sure seemed easy peasy to get the long table, baking equipment, and ingredients for 2,000 Bibi Popkas. This is a very good point. It just showed up.
Yeah.
Showed up overnight.
There's no Amazon. I don't know how he got all this stuff.
Yeah. And then also, Cousin Pam writes, when Larry says the word mass and Balky says don't bring religion into it, it's extra funny because Balky's hat looks like a Pope hat.
Oh, great observation.
Yes. That's a very good point.
I love that break, like the last episode where he's like, bingo. And he goes, don't change the subject. And this one he goes,
don't bring religion.
Mass production. Don't bring religion. And you think of the word mass.
It really is. Every word has. Yeah. The wordplay is just top notch. Cousin Pam also writes, we get a samba, limbo, and a rumba in this episode. Can we please get a dance of joy soon?
Yes, I agree.
Yes.
I think we talked about in the very first episode how many times they do it. I have a listing. So hopefully it's coming up soon.
And then several of our listeners have written about this idea of putting the cream filling in before it goes into the oven.
I don't understand how this works.
Here's Cousin Pam's comment. We're going to get a few comments about this. Cousin Pam says, we see Balky making the dough, but we never see him making the cream filling, which he implied was the harder to make. So I'm thinking he's probably putting powdered pig snout in it, which holds everything together so it doesn't melt. That's my story, and I'm going to stick with it.
That may be the secret recipe.
Maybe that's it.
It's the binder that's resistant to heat. I love when Larry's like, dollop of whatever. And Balky's like, oh.
Pinch of this, dab of that, dollop of whatever.
Cousin Evelyn Behar says, thus far, we have learned that Balky A has legs that are the talk of the village. B is the best bargainer on Meepos, yes. And C is the best Bibi Babka baker on Meepos. It becomes clear at this point in our beloved little show that the small Mediterranean island of Meepos really lost a national treasure in 1986 with the departure of one Balky Bartakamus to America.
True.
Their loss has been our gain. This is a fantastic point. I can't imagine the chaos on Meepos.
Or, I mean, Balky could just be saying these things. No one in America knows. There's nobody else from Meepos around.
He may think he's the best Bibi Babka baker on Meepos.
But it's a good point nonetheless.
Evelyn Behar, again, with the cream filling. They make the Bibi Babkas by filling the uncooked dough with the cream filling before baking. That would never work in real life. The filling would melt in the oven. But I'm going to forgive this because this episode is the best thing in the history of filming, and also because it probably works perfectly on Meepos. Listen,
That's true.
Meepos may be at a different latitude and longitude.
Maybe the ovens are different. Maybe they bake them like over a fire or something.
I bet when they flush their toilets, the water goes the other way. Yeah. I don't know. And then finally, Cousin Evelyn says, I do not understand how these two kept a straight face in the explosion scene. I have tried just watching it with a straight face, and I am incapable. And that was a single take. Well done, gentlemen.
Next, we have Cousin John Adama, who writes, Marianne's moments of clarity are fast becoming one of my favorite recurring jokes. 100% agree, Cousin John.
I love it from the first time I heard it.
And then he writes, also, this is an absurd episode done at an almost frantic pace with no dull moments. There's no time to question the logic. Adding the fact that Marklin Baker and Bronson Pinchot are at the top of their game makes this a fantastic episode. Again, 100% agree.
That the pacing is perfect. Like, it's just a perfect episode.
And then also I want to shout out our newest member, Cousin Helena. And it wasn't the discussion of this episode, but there's another thread going on. If you remember, listeners, a couple episodes back, we brought up the question of this repeated line we heard that said, can you afford it? That gets a laugh from the audience. And the line always comes after a line to the effect of, that's all you're going to say. Can you afford it?
Right.
And it always gets a laugh. And we couldn't figure out why that was funny, or if it was a reference to an ad campaign or something from the 70s or 80s, and we didn't know. And now there's a discussion happening in the group, and Cousin Helena, our newest member, I think has the most logical explanation that I've
She comes
read
the closest.
so far.
Okay, let's hear it.
And she writes, "Hi all, I think it's kind of a throwback to telegrams that charged by the word. So when someone is very brief, especially in a situation that would seemingly call for more discussion, asking, 'Can you afford it?' is a sarcastic reference to the time when people had to carefully choose each word because if not, they literally couldn't afford to send the telegram."
Oh my God, that's really good.
That
can you
makes a
afford
lot
the
of
words?
sense. It still doesn't explain why the
people
audience laughs
Yeah, why
so
do they laugh?
hard.
Can you afford it? Unless
they were just told to laugh.
If Helena, if we're going with the telegram theory, sister, the next step is to look up Western Union commercials from the 1980s.
Okay, we will.
Because
do
I
that
remember
research.
there being some Western Union commercials. We may have cracked this. It may be in those commercials. Oh my God, Helena, you may have cracked this. This is amazing.
I don't see anything with a quick search, but we will do some digging. But thank you so much, Helena. That does provide some necessary context to make it a little more understandable.
I may finally be able to sleep at nights, Helena.
I know.
Because this keeps me up.
I still don't know why there was such a big laugh.
I want to
both
go to
times,
the
but
audience and be like, why are you laughing
why?
at this?
Maybe the applause sign, the laughter sign lit up and they all laughed. Anyway, but this makes a lot of sense. Thank you, Cousin Helena, and welcome to the group.
Welcome, and I hope you subscribe to the show because next week we have another really amazing comedic, kind of another classic episode back to back. Like in this season, they're starting to hit at all the marks.
This is the peak.
We have Larry thinking he knows indoor plumbing, and Larry's
A lot of Larry
plumbing.
explaining
Now,
coming up.
I'm just gonna say right now, I own a house. I'm not very handy. I will install some shelves, but even I know. You do not mess with the plumbing. If you don't know what you're doing, this is disaster.
It can't end well.
No. And even with the YouTube, I'm not messing with the plumbing. No, I'm going to call a guy because I don't need water. I don't need to be flooded out.
Larry didn't even have YouTube back
Right.
then.
He didn't have YouTube. Well, he doesn't read directions to anything because he just knows everything. So.
All right. If you have enjoyed this episode as much as we have, if you love the Bibi Bobka episode and love the plumbing episode coming
Classic #1 episode, all time Perfect Strangers so far.
stay with us. Visit us at danceofjoypod.com. There you can find all the links to where to find our podcast on all the podcast apps, where you can like, subscribe, leave us a rating and review. You can also click a little button at the bottom right of our site and leave us a voice message. Tell us what you're liking. Tell us what you're not liking. Tell us your ideas, your reflections, the little inconsistencies you notice in Perfect Strangers episodes. Tell us all of it. If you don't like the sound of your voice, then you can write us an old-fashioned electronic mail message. And you can send that right on over to danceofjoypod@gmail.com.
Wait, they deliver mail electronically now?
Yeah, it's kind of like an old school thing.
That's crazy.
And also on our website, you can find the links to all our social media accounts. Please head on over to the Facebooks, the Twitter, the Instagram, and give us a like or follow. It would really help us out. But what is the most important thing our listeners should do, Imran?
Oh, this week, Sophia and listener, I'm going to let Steve Martin take us out with a little bit of advice here.
I guess I'll get going now, and I would like to remind you of something the great Maharishi Guru taught me over 15 years ago. Maharishi was a close personal friend of mine, and I studied with him for 15 long, boring years. I didn't really learn that much. The day I was leaving, the Maharishi said something to me I've never forgotten. Whenever there's a crowd of people like this, I always like to pass it on. Because I'll bet a day hasn't gone by that I haven't thought of this particular thing. The Maharishi said, it was never... Always take a litter bag in your car. It doesn't take up much room. If it gets full, you can just toss it out. Thank you very much. Good night.
There's your tip. Always take a litter bag. I can't tell you. I walk around. That's the other thing that gets stuck in my head. Always, Wait, it was never.
Never.
After the build-up, it's so good. He's so good.
That is definitely, according to Steve Martin, the most important thing you should do. But the second most important thing you should do, listeners, is share this show with a friend. Share Perfect Strangers with a friend. Share a Bibi Bopka with a friend. Spread the joy. Spread the love. And that is the second most important thing
That's
you should
right.
do.
And now, hopefully, we are all so happy.
Now we are so happy we do the dance of joy. Hey, 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 hey.